Now, we had seen that canal rays were discovered by Goldstein, and how he came to discover it: when he used in the discharge tube experiment a cathode that was perforated, then he saw rays originating from the anode and traveling through the cathode, that is these perforations, and striking the glass tube. On the opposite side of the cathode here, that is behind the cathode, it was causing a red glow. Since these rays travel through the perforations of the cathode, they were called as canal rays, and that is they travel through the canals over here on the cathode. Now, he further found out that these rays were positively charged. That is why they were attracted towards the cathode, which was negatively charged, as we see here. Now, what did he see about the properties of these rays? He saw that the rays travel in a straight line. Further, he saw that they had properties similar to the cathode rays, and they can cause glow after striking the glass wall of the ray tube. They get deflected by electrical and magnetic field when these fields are applied externally, just like the cathode rays. They were positively charged particles, so they move towards the cathode. Then the rays travel at a much less velocity than the cathode rays. So, how did he find this? He observed the velocity of the rays of these cathode, that is in the previous experiment and Thomson's experiment, the cathode rays were studied, and here Goldstein studied the rays of the anode, which originated from the anode and traveled through the cathode. He found that the velocity of these rays were much slow than compared to the cathode rays. You can obviously guess it is mainly because that the mass of these particles is obviously going to be more, so they are going to travel at a slow speed. Then they had a characteristic E by M ratio, and the lowest value of that ratio was similar to that of H plus ion. Now, when he realized that these are same as that of the H plus ion, they were later, that is these particles of the canal rays were later called as protons by Rutherford in 1917. Now, as experiments were going on regarding the cathode rays, anode rays, the protons, James Chadwick was also going on in his experiments about discovery of more particles in the atom, and he found that there were neutral particles also in the atom, and this discovery came in the year 1932. This he did mainly based on the calculations of the mass of the neutral particle. He called those neutral particles as neutron, as they had no charge, they were neutral. And the discovery of neutron marked a big leap in the study of nucleus of atoms, and in particular the phenomena of radioactivity. In the Bohr's atomic structure, you have got Niels Bohr described the structure of atom with the following postulates in 1950. So, although the study about electron, proton and neutron and their discoveries were going on, alongside it Rutherford's model, since it could not explain all the points about the atomic structure, that is, it could not explain how if a charged body keeps on rotating around another charged body, it may soon fall, it may lose its energy and soon fall into the nucleus, and that would mark the end of that atom. So, since this was not explainable by Rutherford's planetary model, Niels Bohr put up another model of atom in which the following structure points were of importance. The nucleus is at the center of an atom, he said. Then the nucleus is positively charged and carries most of the mass of the atom. The electrons move around the nucleus and they are in circular orbits. These circular orbits are stationary orbits. Why do we call them stationary? Because it is assumed in Bohr's model that when an electron moves around a nucleus, it does not jump from one lower orbit to another higher orbit, or it does not jump from its own orbit to another lower orbit. That means it does not absorb energy or it does not emit energy. As long as the electron is in motion in its orbit, it does not absorb energy or emit any energy. When an electron absorbs energy, then it will jump onto the next higher energy orbit, and as it returns to its original state, it will emit energy. So the question arises, why should it return? Because it is unstable with a high amount of energy in the higher energy state or in the higher energy orbit, and therefore it would try to regain its stability by coming back to its original state, and in the process it would emit energy. This explains the line spectrum of the emission spectrum of hydrogen, and not that why hydrogen spectrum is not a band spectrum, because they are moving individually from one orbit to another orbit, and in that process only then it will absorb energy, and when it will come back to its orbit, then it will emit that energy, and that is how we get the line. It is not moving in a continuous diffused mass around the nucleus, as a continuous diffuse mass of electron cloud, you can say, around the nucleus. It is moving in separate trajectories, in separate circular orbital paths. The advantages and drawbacks of Bohr's model was that it helped to get an idea of the radius of an orbit. It is used to calculate the ionization energy, that is the amount of energy required to remove a loosely bound electron from the outermost shell of an atom, especially for hydrogen-like atoms when they are in the gaseous state. And it also explains the line spectrum of these elements, that is the emission spectrum of hydrogen atom as well as the absorption spectrum, where we observe lines and not bands. Now, what was the drawback then of Bohr's model? The drawback of Bohr's model was that amongst the many drawbacks, the most notable one is whatever calculations for the atomic orbit radius or for the energy of the electron was done for the hydrogen atom, it could not be applied to atoms of elements with more number of electrons. So, those atoms had to have one electron in its outermost orbit, and then we could finally find out the energy, ionization energy for that electron. Now, for that atom, the ionization energy for that atom, that is the energy required to remove that electron. So, when an electron moves in the orbit around the nucleus, according to Bohr, then the angular momentum m into v into r is an integral multiple of h upon 2 pi, where h is called the Planck's constant. mvr is equal to nh upon 2 pi. N is an integer. Now, what is m? M is the mass of the electron, v is the velocity of the electron, r is the radius of the orbit. H is Planck's constant and pi is a constant, as we all know.